with Stormgate around the corner, I've been thinking a lot about what the game's going to look like, what the different races are going to be like. Is it going to be more similar to Warcraft 3? Is it going to be more similar to Starcraft, whether that be 1 or 2? I don't know. But in my experience as a professional sportscaster specializing in RTS, there are some units I like a lot more than others. And so I'm making this video to talk about the 5 units that I hope Frost Giant will take inspiration from when making the units they're going to make that are going to be in Stormgate. These are not going to be units from Warcraft 3, just StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2. So to get this started, the first unit that I hope they take some inspiration from, maybe we see a unit like this early on when the game comes out, is the StarCraft 2 Sentry. I think this was an excellent unit in the game. I think it did a lot to make early game interested in ways that we hadn't really seen before in any game. The fact that it could obstruct terrain was really exciting. We had a lot of cool rushes where people did drops into mains. They would force field the ramp. So, any unit like that can basically manipulate the environment early on without being insanely overpowered, I think is a really good mechanic to add in the game. Hallucinate, wasn't the biggest fan of. I think it had interesting moments. I do feel like that should be more of a late game ability, since a lot of that ability kind of became a default scouting unit. You just make a Phoenix and go across the map and try to see what they're doing. But yeah, overall, the Sentry, I thought it was a good contribution to the game, and I thought it kept it really fresh and interesting in a way that you didn't quite have early on in StarCraft 1. Second unit, I hope that Frost Giant takes inspiration from for the game Stormgate is going to be the Mule. I know that the Mule was very controversial when it first came out. A lot of people did not like it. A lot of people really worried it wouldn't be balanced. And that's a fair assessment when the game first came out, I think. However, it seems like the game's really been balanced well around the Mule. But basically, the idea of having any unit that can enhance an economy early on or throughout the game, I think is an interesting concept, especially when that unit, if you're going to go for that, you're giving up a scan, right? So I think it's not just that it's an economic enhancement, but you're choosing one thing over another. And so I would like to see something like that, or maybe a couple units like that could definitely make the game more interesting. Third unit that I am hoping to see something like in Stormgate is the StarCraft 1 carrier.
Carrier has arrived.
Now, I know there's a carrier in StarCraft 2, but the StarCraft 1 carrier, honestly, it's just a more interesting unit. There's a lot more drama in a game, specifically Protoss versus Terran, that you get with the carrier. The more you micro it, the more you get out of it. The fact that you could keep it at a certain range. Obviously, there were some bugs and some ways that you could manipulate that unit that I think they shouldn't carry over, like being able to keep the interceptors out. But overall, you don't really have anything in any other RTS game that creates the kind of air-to-ground drama that the StarCraft 1 carrier creates. If you look at StarCraft 2, in fact, a lot of the air-to-ground drama becomes these sort of weird death balls that the ground army can never engage with, where it's the opposite for StarCraft 1. A lot of times, it's the fleet has to then try to maneuver away from the ground army, because if they're ever caught underneath it, they'll die. So something like that. Obviously, that might be one of the hardest things to implement in the game, but if they can kind of go to that and get something like carriers that don't become a death ball so much, I think it'd be a great contribution. I do think this is one of the big differences highlighted with this unit from late game StarCraft 1 to late game StarCraft 2. I do feel like sometimes late game StarCraft 1 a little bit more interesting, and it's hard to make it as much of a death ball-y thing, but still, a power unit like that would be cool to see.
Buckle up.
The fourth unit, I am hoping we see something like, and I'm probably going to upset some people when I say this, is the Defiler. Now, the Defiler is a pretty busted unit. Dark Swarm and Plague and Consume, which just allows you to eat Zerglings or any other small unit to get energy for the Dark Swarm and the Plague. That made for an exciting late game. The thing is, you need to be careful to not allow this to become like what Infestors were. In StarCraft 2, it seemed like you were just able to mass up a whole lot In StarCraft 1, it's very hard to get the defiler and then to keep it out. So if there's a way they can have some kind of a devastating spellcasting unit in the late game and less of sort of this massing up like you saw with Infestors, where, you know, the Infestor has good abilities, but when you have, you know, 10 of them, that's not as exciting to watch, especially with how easy it is to cast spells in the game. But I would like to see some kind of unit where when the spell's cast, it is immediately devastating if it works, and it's really game-changing. Because I think anything that allows the game to, on a dime, flip, you know, one engagement can become so important. I think that makes it a lot more fun for the viewer. I think it's more rewarding for a player who's trying to recover and come back. So I want to see some kind of dramatic late-game unit. Again, important to note that it's very hard to get more than a couple defilers in a game because Terran has the ability to irradiate them throughout the game and kill them off before they can cast the spells. But something like that I think would be a lot of fun. And then the final unit that I really want to see from the game Stormgate, my personal favorite out of all RTS games, is a shuttle reaver combo of some sort.
That's what I expected.
I think there's almost nothing more exciting than watching somebody control a reaver, watching somebody kill, whether it's workers or, you know, in a fight, it's microed, it's used to defend or to attack. But the ability to have something slow that if it's ever cornered is killed off, but paired with something fast that might be a little bit more fragile, where you can maneuver it around. Now, before you say in the comments, what about the Disruptor and the Warp Prism? I feel like that's just a less interesting version of the Shuttle Reaver. The fact that the Reaver can fire and the Scarab will remain moving on the ground after the Reaver's been scooped up makes for some more interesting micro moments, where I think it's fundamentally less interesting and exciting, where the Disruptor has to stay on the ground as the shot is fired out, and it can't be picked back up. It can't get scooped back up by the Warp Prism until the Disruptor shot has finished. So something like that. I don't know if you want to make one unit that then you could upgrade it kind of like you would a Hydralisk to a Lurker, where maybe it's like a shuttle that upgrades to a Shuttle Reaver, or a Reaver that upgrades to a Reaver Shuttle. Maybe you want to make it a combination of two units, but I think in order to create real drama on the screen, you have to have units that can really make a fight exciting and fun. The same way that when you watch a Dota game or a League of Legends game, usually it's the interactions of a couple champions or heroes, or in this case, a couple units in the game that really, it could go either way, you don't know. And so there's some tough decision-making in there. And for me, that would be the Shuttle and Reaver, so I hope they put something like that in there. By the way, if you are watching this channel and you have not already, please subscribe, like the video. Subscribe, excuse me, and like the video. I'm going to be making more content around Stormgate as we get closer and closer to the game coming out. I hope to be casting it, as well as streaming it on my Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/TastelessTV. Also, if you want to check out our merch, go to tastelessthreads.com. We got a lot of cool RTS and gaming-related stuff there as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.